So folks, good morning and welcome to day two of our Sumo Logic European Search Amp. My name is John Meredith. I apologize, it's a little dark in my office right now, but I'm in the United States and I'm on the East Coast of the United States, up in Bedford, New Hampshire. So it's a little dark yet, sun hasn't come up. So anyway, Ali, you want to say hi?
Of course. Hey, good morning, everyone. Good morning, EMEA Sumo Logic. So my name is Amar Ali. I'm the head of customer success here at EMEA Sumo Logic. Thank you very much for everyone for doing business with us, for participating in this training. Please feel free to reach out to myself or anyone of the team, see how we can help further. But we are here, for you. And then I'll pass it to Piotr. Thank you.
All right. So let me go ahead and get started here. Like I said, you've obviously heard from me, and you'll hear from me all day today for the next 3 hours. And you've heard from Amar. Peter, you want to say hi?
Yes, definitely. Hello, my name is Peter Walk. I'm a customer success engineer with Sumo Logic. I'm here to help you out with any questions you might have. So don't be shy to ask questions via chat. All right. Talk to me via email. I'll share my email in a moment.
Terrific. Okay. So Peter is here to help us answer questions and stuff in the chat, helps me manage things. Again, as I pointed out yesterday, for those of you in yesterday's session, we have found statistically and very directly that when you take these classes and you take the certification exam that comes with these classes, which is free, of course, my favorite price, it more than doubles your ability to use the tool and be successful. And that's what we're really all about. We want you to be able to take your company's investment in Sumo Logic, and we want to help you be successful, pure and simple. So, and we, like I said, this statement is absolutely true on the slide. And so I can encourage you to do that as well. So again, who is with us today? Well, we've got folks representing 16 different companies, 22 different cities throughout Europe. And also, I know yesterday we had a bunch of folks from Nigeria and South Africa, excuse me. And then representing the DevOps community as well. So glad to have you all with us. Again, if there's anything we can do to make this class a little easier for you, more enjoyable, please let us know. So otherwise, we're glad to have you with us. Yesterday, of course, we did the fundamentals class, and today we're going to do search mastery. So our focus is going to be on search mastery. And just like yesterday, the first 2 hours are devoted to lecture and lab. And it's going to be a very hands-on class, by the way. And then the last hour is devoted to you taking the certification exam. So pretty much the same routine we went into yesterday. For those of you who weren't with us yesterday, like I said, you'll see it. I will, after about an hour or so, take a break. So somewhere about an hour from now or so, we'll take a 10-minute break. And like I said, break it up and have ourselves a good time. So, and I'll show you where you can take the exams and all that stuff. Next week, we are offering some additional classes. They're offered basically on the US East Coast time, but still within your time window here of, where you guys can take the classes. So we have a cloud security monitoring and analytics class on the 21st that you're welcome to sign up and register for. On the 22nd, we've got a cloud SIM fundamentals. You'll find that in our cloud security offerings, we have, like I said, our cloud security monitoring and analytics component, where you can write queries and understand write the same queries that you're going to learn about in this class, but with a focus on security. So where are my users logging in from geography-wise? What IP addresses do we have? Can we look those up to geographic locations? And yes, we can. So we'll talk about that in that class. And then, like I said, on the 22nd, we'll talk about our cloud SIM, our security information and event management system. And we'll teach you how to use that tool from a SOC analyst perspective. And then on the 23rd, we'll talk about how to use it from an administrative perspective, customizing some things, creating some additional rules, more complex things, that sort of thing. And then also in July, on July 14th, we're having our usual administration, our Sumo Logic administration class. And again, you're also welcome to sign up for these things. They're absolutely free, and we'd love to see you in those classes. So one other thing I wanted to mention to you, and that is we do have a customer-facing Slack channel. So if you use Slack, if you go to slack.sumologic.com, you'll see that we do have a Sumo dojo, and you're welcome, like I said, to sign up for that. It's absolutely free, and you're welcome to put comments in there and questions and things like that. We'll gladly try to help you out. Other than that, that takes care of the introduction. Amar or Peter, is there anything you guys want to add before we get into the class?
No, John, I think
I'm
you've
all
done
good.
an awesome job as usual. So
Okay.
I hope for everyone to enjoy, and I'm about to drop soon. Thank you.
Okay, no problem. All right. So let's get to the class at hand. Let me close this up real quick and let's go ahead and get to that class. So this is our standard search mastery class. Yesterday's class, we gave you a harbor tour of what was going on, kind of gave you a little overview and a taste of Sumo Logic as a whole. Okay. Today, what we're going to do is we're going to do a bit of a deep dive in creating log queries. So we're actually going to get into the language. We're going to sit there and be able to create queries. We're going to be able to parse fields. We're going to be able to talk about things called field extraction rules. That's what this FER thing is. We will talk about conditional and filtering operators, putting things on a map, all kinds of nice advanced functionality things like log reduce, log compare, and a bunch of various functions that we can use to see data. We're going to talk about outliers. Again, we'll finish that conversation we started yesterday about creating an alert. And so here in the first 2 hours, we're going to have lecture and labs with a lot of labs, lots of hands-on time. And then the last hour is going to be a chance for you to take the certification exam. And again, the certification exam is open note, open book, open slides. I'll show you here in a few minutes where you can get a hold of those slides for this class. And again, you can also ask me questions when we do the certification exam, and I will try to help you as best I can. Chances are I'm going to give you the right answer. So I will mention to you also that in this exam, there are a couple of questions I'm not particularly fond of. Because they're not covered necessarily by this material. So I want to make sure I help you with those questions as well. So we want to be fair. So let's go ahead, and we also want to mention to you that if you take the certification exam, there is a form that we have that you can fill out. And if you, like I said, take the certification exam after the class and pass it, we will send you a $15 Uber Eats voucher. So you can get a Uber Eats voucher, and you can use that with Uber Eats out in Europe. Also, if you did not fill your Uber Eats voucher out yesterday in yesterday's class, you can put both of your certifications on this form and take care of it that way. So you can get your voucher from yesterday, your voucher from today, and go from there. Let me take a moment here, if you don't mind, while I'm waiting, since everybody's kind of joined. Let me enable a bunch of microphones. So I see a lot of folks are rejoined us from before. So now we go. Everybody's microphone should be enabled. So again, if you've got questions, please feel free to ask them. Okay. Either you can unmute your mic and ask them that way, or you can put them in the chat box. So once upon a time, I've done several stints in my life as different roles. And one of the roles I had was an IT manager. So in my role as an IT manager, I used to come in every morning about 45 minutes early, and I'd review my backup logs, make sure my backups ran. I would review my Active Directory logs and see who locked themselves out of their system. I would review my email logs. Now, what took me 45 minutes to an hour in the morning, I could have easily done, if I had Sumo Logic, could have easily done in 5 minutes or less. So with Sumo Logic, we can create queries and things like that that shows us our operational intelligence. How are our environments doing? Right? Are my systems up? Are they down? What's going on? And again, in today's world, we've got maybe cloud environments, combination of cloud environments, on-prem environments, and the complexity of those cloud environments, being able to see across those environments and see throughout those environments is really key to maintaining your service level agreements and things like that. So we have the capability here of operational intelligence to see how your environment's doing. We also have the ability to use Sumo Logic for security intelligence. Again, where are my users logging in from? Geographically, does that make sense? what's going on with my firewall and my ports? Are people trying to access those ports? What systems are they logging in from? Operating systems, browsers, whatever. So, we've got a lot of information here that we can see with regards to security. And of course, since you're in the business, or most of you are in the business of selling products and services and things like that, how's business, right? So what are my customers buying? What are my customers not buying? If I ran a special promotion, am I seeing, some information and stuff on that? Am I seeing some, is it hitting the cash register, if you will? So I can look at a business intelligence perspective. Now, additionally, at a high level here on global intelligence, because we've got, partnership with GuardDuty and various other tools, we can see at a very high level the areas of operational intelligence, security intelligence, and business intelligence throughout the world. So, for example, if AWS GuardDuty tells us there's an attack going on in the world, we can see the parts of the world that are affected and the people that might be affected, the customers and stuff. So, again, it's kind of a nice little additional piece there that we have. Now, obviously, there's more to this slide, so let's go ahead and click on it and add to it. Again, your data could be coming from various applications. You could have stuff in the cloud, you could have stuff in microservices, you may be running in Zoom or Office 365 or some software as a service type infrastructure. And by the way, we are obviously a software as a service type platform. Various mobile devices, third-party products, we don't care. As long as that those systems are generating log data or metric data, we can ingest that and you can see basically what's going on. So Sumo Logic is born in the cloud, raised in the cloud. We are, in fact, on AWS. So we support things like multi-tenancy and scale. We'll scale up and scale out as you need to. So as you need more resources, we just take care of that for you automatically. Don't need those resources anymore, we'll back them off. We've got some machine learning that you'll see here later on, as well as advanced analytics. You'll see some of that functionality in this class, as well as a bunch of APIs. So for those of you who have programmatic tendencies, if you want to do things like create your users or create your collectors programmatically and things like that, you can certainly do that with our APIs, run queries, et cetera, et cetera. Now over here on the far right side, this is our crown jewel. So not only are we very good at our jobs, but we're also audited by the outside, and we've achieved certain certifications. So we are PCI compliant. We are a CSA star compliant. In the United States, we are FedRAMP moderate authorized, which is dealing with the US government. So we're SOC 2 compliant. So these are certifications that we maintain to ensure that your data is safe and secure with us. And then the last row here again, your roles. And I don't know what your roles are, but I'm sure it has something to do with Sumo, which is why you're here. And so regardless whether you're in DevOps or you're in SecOps or whatever your role is, glad to have you with us. Glad to be learning Sumo. Yesterday, I showed you the Sumo Logic data flow. I showed this to you, but for those of you who weren't with us, in order to use Sumo Logic, first thing we have to do is we have to ingest data into Sumo Logic. We call this the data collection phase. And we have collectors that we use, two types of collectors. I'll get into that in just a minute. Those collectors are nothing more than connectors that allow you to send your log or metric data into Sumo Logic. They will compress, they will encrypt, and they will send that data to Sumo Logic. That's what the collectors do. Now, the collectors are being fed by your sources, right? So if you're running AWS and you want your AWS GuardDuty logs or CloudTrail logs or S3 buckets, fine. If you're running Azure, you want your network monitor stuff, those are all sources. If you want to see what's going on with your Zoom, if you're running Zoom like we are in this class right now, you can get data from your Zoom logs, okay? So I can, those are all sources of data that, again, the collectors are going to pick up on, and they're going to encrypt, compress, and send. Now, once we've got data coming into Sumo Logic, then you and I can go to work creating queries, using operators, doing the things we need to do, and we can manipulate the data so that maybe we've got some sort of a visualization, line charts or bar charts or maps or whatever we need, so we can basically see what's going on. Then we can take those charts if we want to, and we can start building dashboards. So a dashboard is nothing more than a bunch of little panels. Each one of those panels represents some form of a query. Maybe we want to see the raw log data stuff, the log messages. Maybe we want to, again, aggregate that and show bar charts, map charts, line charts, some sort of visualization. And then additionally, we can also create alerts from this saying, gee, we've got some issues, we've got some concerns, we've got some things we want to notify you. So again, whether it's helping you maintain your software licensing agreements or whatever, we want to try to help you with that. So this is the 3 phases of the Sumo Logic data flow. Any questions? All righty then. Because we're ingesting a lot of different data from a lot of different systems, we have a bunch of metadata tags that we can use. Now, metadata is not a Sumo Logic creation. Metadata is an industry standard creation. Metadata means information about your data. So when you create a collector or I create a collector, I can reference that collector by saying underscore collector equals and then the name of that collector. Or if I want to do it by host name, it's underscore source host equals. Okay. You'll notice the one down here in the bottom is bolded, source category. And this is one of the ones we recommend. You can freely configure this one so that it reflects your environments. When you create sources, you can define the source category if you want. And we recommend that when you define the source category, you can break it up with slashes. So for example, maybe you've got a prod environment, maybe you've got a dev environment, maybe you've got a QA environment. So you might set up your source category as prod or dev or QA. Then you can put a slash in there. And in my prod environment, I have a bunch of web servers, or I have authentication servers, or I have whatever. In my dev environment, I also have authentication servers or web servers or whatever. So you can say prod slash web servers or authentication servers or whatever, slash, and then what type of authentication, single sign-on, multi-factor, whatever, Okta, whatever the vendor is. So what happens is that you can search by these sources. That's what the source category is going to do. It's make it very easy for us to go from a big environment like your prod environment, your dev environment, into a specific subsystem in there following that source category trail. So that being said, what we want to do, and I just realized that this slide is out of date. Bear with me a second while I perform my magic. What we want you to do is we want you to log into our training environment. So if you would, fire up Google Chrome or Firefox, and I'd like you to go to service.sumologic.com. So I want you to go to service.sumologic.com. And we're going to show you our training environment, those of you who weren't with me yesterday. So when you go to service.sumologic.com, and just to be fair here, I will go to service.sumologic.com. And you'll see that it shows us and asks us for an email address and asks us for a password. Now, what I want you to do next is I want you to pick a 3-digit number, anywhere from 001 to 999. So for those of you who've always wanted to be James Bond, here's your chance. You can be 007. So pick whatever number that you want, whatever 3-digit number that you want, and I want you to type it in the chat box. That way I know what numbers you're picking and I can make sure people aren't necessarily grabbing duplicates. 1 or 2 duplicates is not a big deal. Everybody's grabbing the same number. We got problems. So thank you, Lily. Thank you, Kay. I'm going to grab 985. So in a minute, I'll explain why 985. But what we want you to do here is we want you to log in as training +, analyst, with that 3-digit number. Now I'm going to grab 985. And you may ask yourself, why is John grabbing 985? Well, 985 was the whole number of the last destroyer I was on. I spent about 20 years of my life in the United States Navy. Okay. So the 985 was the whole number for the USS Cushing, where I spent 3 years of my life on that particular ship. So you're going to type in training + analyst 3-digit number at sumologic.com. That's what you're going to use for an email. And you can use this today. You can use this tomorrow. You can use this next week. You can come in here and play and do these exercises. So you're going into our training environment to do this. Now, the password I mentioned also is capital SECURITY 22 exclamation mark. And if I click on this, you can see it. It is security 22 exclamation mark. Now our password changes every month, the first Monday of the month to be more precise. Therefore, if you want to know when we get around to July and we change the password, if you want to know what that password is, I'm putting my contact information here. So you can reach out to me and you can ask and I will gladly tell you. I'll also show you where you can find that information. So I'm going to log in here, got the password in here, click sign in, and voila, we are now inside of Sumo Logic's training environment. This is our training environment. I'm sure when you guys log into Sumo Logic, your URL is different. Okay, any questions so far? All right, what I'd like you to do, if you're logged in, I'd like you to go ahead and raise your hand. That way I know that you're in. If you're having problems logging in, please let us know. Peter and I will gladly help you out here, okay? But we want to make sure we don't leave anyone behind, because everything we're going to do from now on is going to be in the environment, playing in the environment. So please go ahead and log in. We don't want to leave anybody behind. So I've got 6 out of 12 of you get your hands raised. So it looks like you're all logged in, but again, and I realize there's probably a couple folks just kind of hanging out, but I don't want to leave anybody behind. So if you're having problems logging in, let us know. Otherwise, I'm going to give it a minute or so, and then we're going to go ahead and move forward. By the way, let me turn off my camera and save some bandwidth here. All right. So it looks like everybody who wants to be in, I'm going to assume is in. Again, if you're having problems, please feel free to let us know. I'm going to go ahead and lower all the hands. And let's talk about what we've got here. So when you log into Sumo Logic, this area over here, and if it's not open for you, it's really easy to open. You close it up. Over here where it says Sumo Logic, and we got this hamburger menu, you can click on it. And it will then show, this is our navigation panel. And here in our navigation panel, if I click over here where this little folder is to the right, I have library. And this is the shared library, shared folder structure that you all can use within your company. So your administrator can set this up and they can create folders and subfolders and queries and all kinds of stuff and organize things for you to make it easy for you to find things. You can also search for things. You can search for things by their name, regardless of case, by the way. But you can search for things if you want to. You can also specify things that you're looking for, specific dashboards, public dashboards, log searches, that sort of thing. So you can, I can, we can search for things. Over here, a little bit to the left, is it's got a little folder with a head on it. This is your personal folder. So if you create something, you want to save it, you can put it in your personal folder. Pure and simple. This area here with the star is your favorites. And so if you want to bookmark something or make something your favorite, it's real simple. I'm going to go back here to my library. I'm going to take this particular object that's right here. And you see this got this hollow star. If I click on that hollow star and I fill it in, it has now been added to my favorites. So you can basically click on the star and add things to your favorites if you want to. By the way, let me get rid of this so I can see more things. And maybe I want to add that to my favorites. So you can add things to your favorites fairly easy. Don't want it to be in your favorites anymore? Again, click on the star, hollow it back out. It gets removed from your favorites. Then over here, I have recents, and I can see things that are recently opened by me, or I can see things that are recently shared with me. So I can sit there and look at it one of two ways, things that are shared with me or recently opened with me. And so that's how we get around the navigation pane. Now, below the navigation pane is our main menu. So here is where we can go and install applications that we've got pre-built with a bunch of queries and dashboards. We can see our collectors and all that good stuff. depending on what permissions and stuff you have, you may go into administration, you may see things. In a minute, I'm going to change. I'm going to log in with my credentials, which have full administrative rights, and I'll have more functionality in here. But I can go to my Cloud SIM, I can go to my Cloud SOAR. Most importantly here, I'd like you to click on Help. So here under Help, you can go into our product documentation. You can go out to our support site. You can go out to community site. All kinds of neat things here that you and I can do. And that's our main menu. Now, over here, this tab is our home tab. It's broken up into 3 subtabs. Under my home tab here, I can see my recently opened dashboards, recently run searches, things like that. Under my Learn section, I have a series of micro lessons here that I can click on and see. Our micro lessons are stored in YouTube, but I'm going to show you in a minute where you can see them in other places. Additionally, down here, I have the hands-on labs for the fundamentals class we did yesterday. I have the hands-on labs for the administration class. Our class that we're going to do, these hands-on labs are just not here because of screen real estate, but I'll show you where they are in just a minute. I've got a cheat sheet here. By the way, I suggest you click on the cheat sheet. And what the cheat sheet's going to do is it's going to take us to our documentation. It's going to take us to our help documentation. In a minute, I'll show you how to get there manually. But this log operator cheat sheet proceeds to talk about our parsing operators, our aggregation operators, and all that good stuff. Now, many of you will say, well, this is nice. I appreciate it. It's handy. But do we have a PDF version that I can print out, maybe put it next to my keyboard? Well, we do right here where it says PDF version. You can click on that. You can print it out and you can put it next to your keyboard. Okay. So for those of you who are looking for that special gift for Father's Day, here you go. You can go ahead and print it out, give it to Dad. I'm sure Dad will be thrilled. Okay. So there you have the log operator cheat sheet. We go back to here again. How did I get here? I clicked on this, I clicked on this, I clicked on this, and there we go. This will take me to my documentation. This will take me to what's new in Sumo. We're constantly making updates, so you can see what things we've changed. Here's another link to support. If you click on Get Training, here's where you can see what our training schedule is and sign up for other classes and things like that. And then we also have a vibrant community here. So we have a community site where you can search for things. You want to look for code examples or whatever, best practices, you can go in here and have a good time searching for things. Additionally, one other thing that I think is kind of cool here, we also have an ideas section. So if you've got a product enhancement request or whatever, you can go up here to ideas. You can submit your idea, your suggestion, and most importantly, you and I and everyone can vote on it. And so these are things, this is how you get your voice heard with regards to Sumo Logic. Okay. That's our community site. I highly encourage you to take advantage of it. Now, the next section over here is our certification section. And here, if you click on Get Certified, because you've got a training account, you only see these 3 squares. Okay. Now, if you don't mind, I am going to log out of here and I'm going to log in with my account. And there's a reason why I'm doing it. So bear with me a second. To log out, again, you open up your navigation panel, just like I did. Go down here to where your training account is, click on it, and there's an option at the bottom to sign out. Now I'm going to log in with my credentials. And the reason I'm going to do that is when you log in, close all these tabs, by the way. And to close all the tabs, of course, you can close them all one at a time. But if you grab these 3 vertical dots, you'll see I have an option to close all tabs. Kind of cleans it up a little bit. Now, back to my certification, back to this Get Certified. When I click on this, this takes me to my learning management system. You can get here in our training environment, but you only see 3 things. But if you go to your company's Sumo Logic environment, and if you log into that Sumo Logic environment, you'll see all 5 of these sections. Now, what are these sections? This section right here is our self-paced section. So you can go in here if you want, and you can take self-paced courses. All of our courses that we offer, instructor-led, are also here. So you want to take the admin class, it's under general, you can take the self-paced course. To prepare for the certification exam, either take the self-paced course or the instructor-led course. Either one, whatever works for you. Okay. To go back in the upper left-hand corner, there's a little back button here. Like take. Also on this page, this is also where we keep the password. So next month when we change the password, we'll put the password here. So you could, in your company's Sumo Logic environment, you could click on the Home tab, click on Certification, click Get Certified. And then when you do that, if you click on this Become a Sumo Logic Expert, you'll be able to see the password, the new password. Or you can email me and ask, that's fine. Learn a new skill. Here we have all of our micro lessons. I said we have them on YouTube. That's absolutely true. We also have them here. So here's all of our quick little 5 to 10 minute videos that you can watch and see, and how to set up a collector, introduction to metrics, ingest, budgets, all kinds of stuff. So we've got a really outstanding instructional design team that constantly is working, making these things up for you. So this recorded live training, this area is important. Remember I mentioned that you can have this, the exam you're going to take is open note, open book, open slides, right? Well, if you go into the recorded live training, and if you look for the search mastery class that we're in right now, you can go in here and you can click register and boom, you're registered. And here we have a recording of the class. So you can listen to this class if you want to. I believe Josh is doing this one. Just looking to see if we, whatever. And then you can also download the lab guide as well as the slides. So that's how you get a hold of the slides. Pretty simple, pretty easy. Want to make it easy for you. We want to help you be successful. Okay. And then last but not least, we also have our certification exams. So when we get ready to take the exam, we'll come back here and we'll talk about that. So I wanted you to be aware of those things. Now, as far as our labs for this class, what we're going to do is we're going to go out to our product documentation. You could open the navigation panel, like I'm going to do here. You could click on help. You could click on documentation. Now, I don't know about you, but I'm old school. So I like doing things by command lines and all that good stuff. So I know the URL for our documentation. So I'm going to add a new tab here, and I'm going to type in help.sumologic.com. Help.sumologic.com will take you to our product documentation. Anything you want to know is in here. You want to set up a collector, it's there. You want to set up our open telemetry collector, it's there. You want to create a query, it's there. All kinds of stuff are here. And you'll see that it's broken down into chapters, different sections and stuff. Now, the section I'm really focused on for the most part is this first chapter. Start here about Sumo Logic, talks about the interface, all that good stuff. But there's a section here called Quick Start Labs and Tutorials. And if you and I click on that Quick Start Labs and Tutorials, you'll see for all of our classes, here's the labs. So you and I can find the hands-on lab search master. And here is where our labs are. And you and I are going to go through these 13 labs together. And that's basically what we're going to spend the next hour and 40 minutes doing, or next hour and 40 minutes doing. Okay. By the way, I'm going to take this URL, if you don't mind, to save a little time here, and I'm going to paste it in the chat box. So for those of you who had a hard time following along, you can just click on this lab guide and go to town. Okay. If you click on the introduction link, there's not really too much there. It just talks about accessing a training environment, how to get there, that sort of thing. So we're going to start with lab 1. Now I'm going to warn you. Labs 1, 2, and 3 are a little clunky just because they're broken up into different sections, different parts here and stuff. So what I want to do here is I'm going to walk you through these sections, creating queries and stuff like that. Any questions before we get started? Then let's get started. To write a new log query in Sumo Logic, we're going to go back to our Sumo Logic environment. We're going to go ahead and find this new blue button. And in this new blue button, we're going to click on it. We're going to choose log search. Everything we're going to do today is going to be clicking log search. So I open up a new log search here, and here's our log search interface. Here's where we add our query. Here's our time frame. Here's our execute button. Down we'll see our messages, all that good stuff. Now, you can, here in Lab 1, take the code that's right there, swipe over that code, right-click on that code, copy it, go back to Sumo Logic here, and you can paste that code in. And then if you want to execute that code, you can either click this button or you can hit the enter key of your keyboard. Either one of those things will work. Now, what am I looking at here? First of all, when you and I create a query, by default, it sets the range here for 15 minutes. By default, it's a 15-minute window. Okay. I'll talk about changing it in just a minute, but by default, it's 15 minutes. Makes a great test question. Here I can see my date and timestamp. Here I can see that this query is done running. It took 1 second. I've got 7,021 messages in my case, and here's my session ID. Additionally, if I want to show, I can click show and I can get a histogram of how many messages I've received in each of these 1 minute, 1 minute sections of our 15 minutes. Okay. If I change this, if I want to change this and click on this, make it 60 minutes and rerun it, now you'll see that my columns got a little smaller and I'm seeing 60 of them. Okay. Then down below here, and by the way, this may be helpful to you, it may not. You can hide it, you can show it. It's entirely up to you. Down here, I actually see the messages that I got back. So so here are my messages, and then over here, this is my field browser. And I'm going to talk about the field browser here in a little bit. Okay. Now, let me talk about the field browser now. I'm going to deviate a little bit from the exercise, but we're going to get into the field browser in a little bit later. But if I get rid of all this, and as I start typing here, you'll notice that I don't even have to type. It gives me a choice and selection here. I'm going to deviate from the lab just a little bit. So I'm going to say underscore source category equals lab/snort. Now we have a device, snort device, that allows us to see issues and stuff within our network. Okay. And so this generates logs, and I'm looking at those logs. Now, the reason I chose the snort logs is because the snort logs, when I look at my field browser here, I've got a collector, a size, a source category. I've got the standard fields here. Okay. I've got the standard fields here, and that's all I've got, these standard fields. Now, the cool thing about this is that I can click on the name here, and it will show me what the values and stuff are. This is not terribly exciting because there's only a single value here. Okay. And if I want to show the value, I can check the checkbox, and it now shows me that source host, or now it shows me my size in bytes. So you can add these fields very quickly if you want to. And I'm going to just turn them off for right now. Now, back to lab number 1. Lab/Apache/access. Notice as I type, it gives me a selection here. The IntelliSense is kicking in, and what I want are my Apache access logs. Now, so here I'm looking at my Apache access logs. Again, I've got over 60 minutes here. I've got about 30,000 messages. You'll notice if I scroll down here, I've got a bunch more fields. Where did those fields come from? Those fields came from something called a field extraction rule. And I'll talk about those field extraction rules in just a little bit. We get to lab 3. I'll come back and talk about these field extraction rules. But again, here I see that I've got my various status codes. I can click on the word status code and I can see my 8 different status codes that I have. If I have more than 10, so here this only had 8, I can see all the values. Here my source IP has 25. When I click on it, I only see the top 10. So this window, this panel is open, restricted to 10, okay? But I can see my top 10 or whatever. So I can just simply put my cursor in here and see some of my values. Again, if I want to add those values and display them in my query, I check the check boxes and it adds those values in. So as you can see, this field browser thing can be very handy for us, making it very easy for us to find things. Okay. Now, let me get back to my lab 1 here. Okay, so here I'm looking at my Apache access logs. And I'm looking at all the log messages in my Apache access logs. Let's say I only want to see specific messages. I only want to see messages that have, and I can put an operator in here called and, right? I only want to see messages that have in there somewhere a 403. So now when I rerun this query by clicking on this blue button or hitting the enter key, now I'm down to 314 messages. So this first line, this metadata line and keywords allows me to filter what I'm looking at. Obviously, the less number of records I have, the faster things run, the better we're off to the world. Okay, things are, just makes it easy. That basically means somewhere in this message, I have the number 403. Could be in my timestamp, could be in here, could be my status code, could be whatever. Now, first thing I want you to understand is that this operator, this AND operator, is optional. I don't need it. If I remove the word AND, I'll get the exact same results. So the AND is optional. Now, if I want to use a Boolean operator like OR, what I'm looking at is I want to see my Apache access logs or any message that has a 403, any message in my system. So now I'm up to like 42,000 messages. And if you look, this message somewhere in it has a 403, which is why it's showing it to me, okay? And if I expand it out, I'm sure I can find where that 403 is. So you want to be careful here when you're using Boolean logic. Now, I mentioned the AND is implied. If I don't specify something, it assumes an AND. If I want to use an OR, I must explicitly state an OR. Okay? And that's what we're trying to show you here in lab 1, that you can use AND operators and OR operators. You can even get a little bit more advanced here if you want. So for example, I want to look at my Apache access logs. And within my Apache access logs, I want to look for the word, excuse me, error, or the word that starts CHEK, and I'm going to put a wildcard in there, a star. For us, a star is a wildcard. That basically means I don't care if it, as long as it starts CHEK, it could be checked in, checked out. It starts CHEK, I'm going to show it. So when I run this, I'm looking at my Apache access logs for the words either error or the word checked. And you can see it highlights for me, in this case, a lot of checked out. But it gives me back the messages that match this criteria. And that's what we're trying to show you. You can, on that first line, and by the way, that first line is case insensitive. I don't care how you type it, it's going to be case insensitive. It automatically looks for uppercase error, lowercase check, uppercase check, so forth and so on. So that's what we're trying to show you there in steps 1, 2, and 3. Now, if I want to look at, say, my Apache error log for the last 45 minutes, I can select my error log, and I can change this time. Now, the problem is I don't see 45 minutes, 15, 60. Well, what you can do is you can type in a command to make that happen. You want to go back, so that's a minus sign. You want to go back 4 or 5, and M for minutes, D for days, H for hours. That's how simple it is. So you type in a minus sign, how far back you want to go, D for days, H for hours, M for minutes. So you can, I can, we can go back and see that. Now this time, just so you know, is based on a timestamp in your log messages. So when you create your sources and bring your data in, you decide what to use for your time of your messages. And right now I'm going back 45 minutes based on the timestamps of my messages. As I mentioned to some of you yesterday, there's a little gear symbol over here. And I can actually, there's a switch over here that I can use that says I can use receipt time. And if I move cursor over to the right, it gives me a tooltip that says you can enable this for using when we at Sumo Logic receive something. So I can click on this, slide it over. I can rerun this query. And now what I'm seeing is I'm not looking for the last 45 minutes based on the timestamp of the logs. I'm looking at the last 45 minutes when we received it at Sumo Logic. So here's when we received it. Here's the timestamp from the log. And so you can also see the difference of how long this is taking. It takes about 3 seconds, it looks like, to get this data in here. Data should come in fairly quickly. So again, you can adjust this time. Now, not only can you adjust this time to relative time, you can also use a date picker. So over in custom, you can pick a date range if you want to. You can pick a time range if you want to. So you can pick dates and time. You can type the dates and times too. The only thing you can't type is in some crazy Unix date code. It doesn't take that, but it does understand dates and times. Now, I also have to be fair here, right? Most of you are in Europe, and your way you define dates is different than, say, how we define dates in the United States. We usually, you go month, day, year. I believe you guys in some cases go day, month, year, like we did in the military. Now, what you can do to get around that and to deal with that is, if I go in here to my Sumo Logic environment, and if I go into my user account down here, there is a section for preferences. And in the preferences, in your and my preferences, you define what you want to use. And if you're using your browser default time zone, then whatever your format and stuff is, day, month, year, you're fine. And that'll automatically adjust. You can also specify, you know, again, the format here and the default time zone that you want. So just wanted you to be aware of that stuff. There's nothing on the test with regards to this, so don't worry about that as far as the test is concerned. All right. Let's say that I want to see 2 different log sources. So I want to see my Apache logs, Apache Air logs, or I also want to see for my source category equals lab/Apache lab/John /access. So what I have here is I'm saying, look, I want to see my Apache Air logs or my Apache access logs. When I run this, I'm seeing both those logs for the last 45 minutes. And let me also throw this switch back. For the last 45 minutes, based on the times that are in my logs. So here I am seeing my Apache Air logs. I am also seeing jump to another page. There we go. My Apache access logs as well. Okay. All right. Now, if I put an and in here, and this is where ands and ors become kind of important, right? I put an and in here, then I'm looking for a message that's both in my error log and in my access logs, and they don't exist. My error logs track errors, my access logs track who's accessing. So I would never have the same message in both those logs. So want to make sure I make a point out of, again, this Boolean logic, the ands and ors. Okay, make sure you use the right operator. All right. One other thing, I want to go back to the slides here for a second because I want to make a point of something here. This is probably the last slide I'll show you, by the way. But here, when we write a query, we start out with, again, this metadata tag and the various keywords. And that will then restrict what we get. Then after that, we tend to focus and we tend to parse, then we can filter, then we can aggregate, then we can format. And we're going to be doing all these things in this class. But we typically use the metadata keywords first, then we parse, filter, aggregate, and format. You might see that from the test question. All right. One other thing I can do here, remember we talked about those wildcards? Since both of these start with lab/Apache/whatever, I could replace this with a wildcard and basically get the same effective results. I'm seeing both my Apache error logs as well as my Apache access logs. By the way, again, from the reminder, if I go down here and I look at source category, it has a number 2 on it. If I click on it, I can see that 79% or 22,000 things are coming from my access logs, and 5,000 or 20% are coming from my error logs. So really kind of handy here to have that kind of information at the palm of your fingertips there. Okay. And so that's what we're trying to show you here in steps 5 and 6, that sort of thing. Now, we also have something in our product called Livetail. And Livetail is used typically by your administrator or whoever sets up your collectors, sets up and brings in your data to see the data that's being ingested. I can, you can, we can take a query like this. And if I click on these 3 vertical dots, I can shift it to Livetail. And what Livetail shows me is the data as it's being ingested. So I'm seeing this new data coming in from my system, and here is my log messages. Notice it doesn't highlight anything. If I want to highlight something, there's a highlight button. So maybe I want to see 403. Sorry, 403, John, not 503. Maybe I want to see things like HTTP. Oops. Boy, I'm probably having a hard time typing today. And so now I can see various things that maybe I'm interested in seeing. Only 10 people can run Livetail at a time, okay? It's a governor set in your environment. And the reason is that people don't really run queries from Livetail. They just use it to make sure data is coming in. But that's what Livetail is. And I'm going to go and close that up in case any of you want to run Livetail and poke around and play around. Okay. Let me just check and make sure everybody's got their mics enabled. All right. So that takes care of lab number 1. Any questions about lab number 1? Let's go ahead and do lab number 2, and then we'll take a break. Okay. So here in lab number 2, we can write some queries to see some information, right? We're going to start and aggregate and count and look at things and all kinds of fun stuff. All right, so let me take a look at my Apache access logs. So again, the same command, and I want to add an additional command. In order to get to the next line or to word wrap or whatever, that's either a shift enter if you're on a Mac, or it's an alt enter if you're on a Windows keyboard. So that's how you move your cursor to the next line. Now we connect our commands together with a pipe. So I type in a pipe, and then I can say counts by, and in my case, underscore source. And when I run this, because I'm doing a count, Here in my messages tab, I still see my original messages, but because I'm doing a count or a min or a max or some aggregation, it creates for me this aggregates tab. And here on this aggregates tab, I can see in the last 45 minutes, let me make this 15 minutes, because that's the default. I can see how many messages I'm getting from each of these sources. So you can count by source. And that's what we're trying to show you here in that first part of the lab. Now, another thing I can do is I can parse out IP addresses. Yesterday, we showed you something called a parse anchor. Well, first of all, let me get rid of this line. Let me show my results. If my messages are all consistently the same way, I can use a parse anchor. However, in my Apache error logs, my IP address is over here. Okay. In my Apache access logs, my IP address is over here. So I can't use a parse anchor because they're not formatted the same way. They have different structures. But what I can do is I can do a parse regex. Now, regex stands for regular expressions. And if you do a search for regular expressions, and regular expressions, by the way, is not a Sumo Logic creation. It is created by the World Wide Web Consortium. Okay, regular expression cheat sheet. You can parse out things like email addresses and various other things, IP addresses and stuff like that. So if you do a search on this, you can see the syntax and how to build these things and all kinds of fun stuff. If I go in here and I want to do a parse regex, again, I'm going to type in a pipe, parse, the word regex. That means I want to do a regular expression. You'll notice I get this nice helpful tip down here. And it gives me an example where I am going to take this example and I am going to copy this example, or I can copy it from here, whichever you want. And let's talk about what this example is doing. Okay. This example is going through and it's looking for 1 to 3 digits followed by a period, followed by 1 to 3 digits, followed by a period, followed by 1 to 3 digits, followed by a period, followed by 1 to 3 digits. And you and I know that to be the format for a version 4 IP address, v4 IP address. And so when I run this, it's going to create a field called IP address, and anything it finds that it matches, it's going to put it right there. So when I run this, it's going to extract out a field called IP address, and it's going to pop out, in this case, the IP address that's there from my Apache access. In the case of my Apache error logs, you'll bear with me here just a second. Let's jump to the end here. We got so many Apache error log, or so many Apache access logs here. I'm trying to find an example here of my Apache error log. There we go. Here's the Apache error log. And here's where the IP address is there. Okay. So it automatically parsed through the entire message and found something that matches and displays it out. And that's what we're trying to show you here in lab 2. Then if I want to, I can count by IP address. So I'm going to go out here, type in a pipe, say count by IP underscore address. And spelling does count. Now, again, because I'm doing a count, it creates this aggregates tab, and it's showing me my results. Now, if I want to take it even a step farther, I can filter by the value of my count. So I can add another line, and I can add a where clause. Where underscore count, and I'll explain underscore count in just a second, is greater than 500. And so now I get the results where my underscore count is greater than 500. Now, people ask, this right here, this count is an operator. It's going to count things like a teacher in the classroom. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, whatever. The results of that count are stored in underscore count. That's what this field is right here. So that's what I want to filter where it's greater than 500. Now, one other thing I want to mention to you here, this is where now I've got my results that I'm interested in or whatever. Now I can create it in certain visualizations. You'll find that in the messages tab, I don't have any capability of creating these sort of visualizations, bar charts, line charts, whatever. In the aggregates tab, I do. So I can create a pie chart out of this result if I want to, and then I can go out here and add it to a dashboard. So I can, call this whatever I want to. I can go out and create a new dashboard here, and I'm just going to create something here for you. IP addresses, I'm going to throw today's date. It's going to create a new dashboard, which is what I want. And then I do want this new dashboard in the new dashboard user interface. So when I click add, now it's going to add this in here, and I can manipulate it around, make it bigger, smaller, adjust it. If I want to, in the new dashboard interface, I can add another panel and add my query right here and build my query right here if I want to. So lots of things that we can do. Or I can go back here, and maybe what I want to do is remove that filter, and I can remove it and wipe it out, or I can also comment it out. To comment out a line, it's 2 forward slashes. I'm going to add a space because I like readability. So now I've got all my results. I can add this to the same dashboard. So again, I think I called it IP addresses. No, that's right. There it is. I click add, and now it's added this particular here. And if I want to, I can go back here and I can say, let's see, this is tabular data. And I could, again, add that to my dashboard. So as you can see, building dashboards is not particularly hard. Each one of these dashboards consists of these separate panels, which are their own little queries. So I just wanted to mention that to you. And that pretty much takes care of lab number 2. Yeah. And they've got another example here. The purpose of exercise 4 here in lab number 2, they want to show you that you can have different parsing mechanisms in the same query. So I can do a parse regex as well as a parse anchor if I want to. So I can add both a parse regex or a parse anchor in here. And as well as other parsing mechanisms as well. We can parse JSON, we can parse CSV, we can parse XML, lots of different parsing mechanisms that we have. In fact, speaking of parsing options, we can go into lab 3, which, if you don't mind, I'm going to do after we take a break. So what do you say we take a 10-minute break, and I will see you back when this counter gets down to 0. So I'll see you back here in about 9 minutes and 55 seconds. Have a good break, folks. And we are back, ladies and gentlemen. So hopefully you had a nice break there, got a chance to get some more coffee, tea, juice, water, or whatever. And so now we're ready to do lab 3. And as I mentioned, the first 3 labs are a little bit clunky because they've got lots of topic points to talk about, okay? Once we get past these first 3 labs, everything is typically single subject, single focus. So it makes it very, very easy. So here in lab 3, they want to talk a little bit more about parsing. And so what I want to show you is that, let me close this up for a second. We parse different things, right? We can parse regex, we can parse JSON, we can parse CSV and all that fun stuff. All right. If I grab a JSON source, so I'm going to go out here and grab a new log source tab. I know that my CloudTrail logs are in JSON. So I'm going to say underscore source category, and you notice it starts helping me out here a little bit. Labs / AWS / CloudTrail. Okay. And I'm going to grab my CloudTrail logs for the last 15 minutes. Okay. Now these are JSON logs. And the thing about JSON logs is JSON logs are the latest darling to hit the industry, and industry loves JSON logs because you have these key value pairs. Okay. But what happens with Sumo Logic is by default, we automatically take these JSON logs and we parse out these fields. So when you look at your field browser, you will see all the fields here. We do that automatically to JSON logs. Okay. JSON logs are very popular. Customers like them, use them a lot. So we do this automatically. Remember that gear symbol I showed you earlier with the receipt time? Well, this auto parse mode, if you put your cursor over it, it says, hey, when we come across JSON logs, we will automatically parse and put each of these fields in the field browser. If I throw this switch to off and I run this, you will now notice that I'm not parsing all of those fields. There's other fields that I'm parsing, but not all of them. They're not all parsed out. Now, I suggest you leave this in auto parse mode so it automatically parses JSON values. You might ask yourself, well, where do these other fields come from? They came from something called a field extraction rule, which I'll explain in just a little bit. So bear with me, it's at the end of the lab. So we automatically parse JSON fields by default. And so I could very easily say, gee, I want to add AWS region. Boom, there we go. Gee, I want to grab event type. I want to grab event name, check mark. And so check mark here, sorry. I can sit there and see that stuff. Okay. Okay. Somebody asked a question here, and that is, and it's not a dumb question, it's a great question. What happens if we receive malformed JSON? How does it handle that? If it's really malformed, we're going to have a hard time parsing it and reading it. Therefore, we probably won't, we certainly won't extract those fields. Okay. So if it's really malformed. Now, if it's something we can form out, we will form it out. I mean, if we can, we will. But if it's something that's totally malformed and totally messed up, then there's no way in heck we can parse it. Okay. And you're going to have to get that stuff cleaned up somehow. So I'm not sure. Here's my question back to you. How many JSON logs do you have that are malformed? I'm going to assume very few. So, but thanks for asking. Yes, sir.
Can I sell one hint here, John?
Please, Peter, go ahead.
So if you look at this JSON data on the screen, for example, there is a timestamp like event time. So it looks like a timestamp, but from Sumo perspective, it's just a string at this stage. So if you would like to use that that event time as or reformat it to an actual timestamp format, there is a very handy operator called parse date. So parse date parses out text string and converts it to actual date and time value.
All right, very good. So yes, this is dealt with as a literal string. And as Peter mentioned, we can turn this back into a date. So it's treated as a date. You'll be able to see over here the different symbols to indicate whether it's being treated as text, or it's being treated as numeric, or it's being treated as a date time field. Here's the symbol for a date time field. So, good. Anything else before we get into the next part of the lab here? All right. We want to talk about no drop, and we want to talk about what happens when we normally parse. So if you'll bear with me here just a second, I'm going to go into my Apache error logs, and I want to look at my Apache error logs, right? And here you'll notice that when I look at my Apache error logs, some of them, not all of them, have an IP address. This one does. This one doesn't. This one does. This one does. This one does. Some of them don't. Now, the point of this is that if I add that parse regex statement like we talked about before, or if I do a parse anchor to parse out the IP address, not only is it going to parse this field out, but it's automatically parse statements not only parse the field out, but they also act as a filter. So if I want to do a parse anchor, as we learned yesterday, I want to anchor on certain characters. I'm going to anchor on this bracket on this side. I'm going to anchor on this bracket on this side. I swipe over everything, including the bracket and the IP address. I right click on this. I say parse selected text. Then I can go in here and grab this IP address by itself before the double quote. I can click on this IP address, and I can call this IP address or whatever I want to call it, right? Right. And it adds that command line in. But notice right now I've got 1,715 messages. When I run this, I am down to 206 messages. Well, where did all the other messages go? All the other messages went away because it could not find, if it found didn't have the word client in it or an IP address, it automatically deleted or dropped those messages. Now, you may want to have those messages. You may want to see those messages. So you can append a command called no drop. And if you add the command no drop, it will not drop any messages. It will extract the field where it can, but it's not going to delete messages just because. So remember two things to take from this. When you parse and you add a parse statement, not only does it extract out the field for you, but it also acts as a filter. If you don't want it to act as a filter, you want to append the no drop statement. And for those of you who are test takers, certification test takers, if you see a question like, gee, you're getting unpredictable results when you're parsing, what can you do to troubleshoot it? You want to look for the answer that says, add the no drop statement, see what you're getting rid of, okay? So that's how you would troubleshoot that. So that's no drop, and it's a very powerful thing in our product, okay? So you can add that. That's what these first 4 or 5 steps are doing here, right? Another thing that you can do is if you parse out a field, and I'm going to go ahead and grab in step 6 here, these 2 lines of code. I'm going to copy these 2 lines of code, and I'm going to paste them. All right. Now, this first line of code is going out to my GitHub data source, and it's only looking for the messages that have the word committer in them. Because I know if you've got a committer, if you commit something, you also have to have an email. So here I'm doing a parse anchor to parse out that email information. And so in my message, again, I've got an email. I'm going to parse that email out. Great. Got 38 messages here in the last 15 minutes. Now, if you want to parse out this field even farther, so here I've got my email address. I want to extract out user. I want to extract out the domain name. In order to parse a field further that you previously parsed, you're going to use parse field equals command. And the equals is going to be EMEA. Then I'm going to specify my structure here a little bit. So bear with me a moment. Let me go back here, and that's what I thought. Okay. So I want double quote, double quote. I'm going to have a star before my @ sign and a star after my @ sign. And the star before my @ sign is going to be my username. And the star after my @ sign is going to be my domain name. So
star in front of the @
yeah, actually I need to ask here. Hang on. There we go. Oh, that's not a star. You're right. Thank you. Here in a football scholarship, guys. Sorry. There we go. All right. So if you want to parse a field even farther, like I said, you've already pre-parsed. You've got to use the parse field equals command. That's what we're trying to show you. Now, I mentioned yesterday that these fields listed down here are listed in alphabetical order. D comes before E, which comes before U. If you want to change this, change the order, you can go in here and you can use the fields command. So FILDS, and I can say, you know what, I want to see user first, then I want to see domain, then I want to see email. And if I run this, now I see user first, then domain, then email. So I just wanted to show you how you can change the order of things if you need to. And that takes care of steps 6 and 7, the parse field option. All right. In step 8 here, let me copy the code. In step 8, we're going to revisit our friend, the snort log. I showed you the snort log, one of the first things I showed you, and let me comment out, if you don't mind, this second line. So when I look at my snort logs for the last 15 minutes, you might notice it actually has 2 IP addresses in it. There's 1, there's 2. One is the source IP and the source port. The other is the destination IP and the destination port. Now, when you and I parse out a field, like we do a parse regex for an IP address, it only captures the first IP address. So what happens when I have multiple IP addresses in a message? What can I do to get those out? Well, what you want to do is you want to add the multi-switch. The multi-switch. And then it will go through the message again, looking for multiple occurrences of this pattern match. Now, one thing I want to mention to you, right now, I've got about 1,378 messages. When I add my multi-switch and I run this, the number of messages in this case are going to double. Good news, that doesn't affect what you pay Sumo Logic. We don't charge by the results here. But what it did was it went through this message and said, oh, I found 2 things that match. So it made a copy of the message, the first message. And it extracted out the first IP address. And then it went to the second, the copy of the message, and extracted out this IP address, which you see here. Then it went to the second message and parsed through it and said, oh, there's 2 of these. So it made a copy of it again and went through this process over and over and over again. That's why your results doubled. So just wanted you to be aware that that's what's going to happen. But the multi option allows you to get multiple occurrences of something in there. Then the last thing I want us to talk about here is field extraction rules. So I mentioned field extraction rules earlier. When I went into my snort logs, I said, gee, I've got my standard little metadata tags. That's it. But if I look at, say, my Apache access logs, and I run that, I got a bunch of fields here. Where in the world did all these fields come from? Well, these fields, if it was a JSON log, they could have come from parsing JSON, but this is not JSON. They came from something called a field extraction rule. So your administrator can go in here And under the manage data, under logs, they can create field extraction rules. And so we can, you can, I can, so bear with me a second while I find my demo fur here. We can create a field extraction rule that when we ingest data from our lab/Apache/Access, we are going to automatically parse out those fields and make those fields available to our users in the field browser. That's what this code is doing. Now, just so you know, I'm going to add a rule here, and I'm going to give this rule a name. I'm just going to type in my initials just to appease the rule gods. Okay. We know what a lot of logs look like. Okay. So for example, here I can pick my metadata. I can pick my value. Let's grab CloudTrail. I'm sorry. Let me grab CloudTrail instead. Okay. And here we've got a bunch of templates. So we know what Akamai looks like. We know what CloudTrail looks like. We know what IIS logs look like, et cetera, et cetera. So I could click my CloudTrail log and it's going to give me a template that I could use that's going to parse out all my fields because we know what that looks like. And so you and I, or the administrator, or whoever sets these things up, can create these for us so that we see those fields in our field browser. That's what these field extraction rules are. You do not have that ability with the account that you have to create those rules. We teach you how to set these things up in the administration class, and there you'll have the rights to do that. So those are field extraction rules, and that's why. Now, interestingly enough, when I use a field extraction rule and I have a field name like source code, so let me go back here for a second. Let me go back to this query, Apache Access, and again, in my metadata field here, I've got one here called status code. So I can actually use that field name. Equals 403. Okay. So now, instead of looking for 403 anywhere in the message, it's only going to show me those messages that have a 403 in the status code field. So there is 403 there. Here is 403 there. I'm down to 79 messages. So instead of looking for 403 anywhere in the message, it's going to look specifically in the status code field. Now, one little thing I do want you to be aware of. If you try to take this out to LiveTail, LiveTail is going to throw an error. The reason LiveTail is going to throw an error is it doesn't know what to do about this status code. Remember, LiveTail shows us data as we're parsing it and bringing it into Sumo Logic. We haven't created the field extraction rules yet. If I get rid of the status code equals and just put a 403 in there, I'm fine. LiveTail will run just fine. It's only going to show me messages that have a 403 in them for sure, but it will in fact let me ingest this and let me run this. Come on, LiveTail. Tell you what, let me make this a little easier. We grab 200s. I got a lot of 200s. I don't have a lot of 403s. There we go. So I wanted you to be aware that field extraction rule fields don't work with LiveTail. Just a little trivia thing, nothing to do with the test. All right. So we're on to lab number 4. Lab number 4, we want to talk about conditional operators. So here in conditional operators, I can add if statements. Now, we take this code, if you don't mind, and let me copy it, swipe over it, copy it, and paste it. I also want to show you something very valuable, probably the most valuable thing you're going to learn in this class. How can I comment out more than one line of code? Okay. If you want to comment out more than one line of code, if you put your cursor up here in the query area, and if you're on a Windows machine, hold down your Alt key. If you're on a Mac, hold down your Option key. And your cursor will change to a plus sign. Then if you drag a line down, whatever you type across that will be added to all those lines. So if I type in my 2 forward slashes, or 2 forward slashes in a space, if you want to improve readability, that comments out all those lines. So what I'm doing here real quick is I'm looking at my Apache access log. I'm doing a parse anchor to extract out my status code. Now, this next line, what it's going to do, I'm going to uncomment it out. It's going to create a field called successes. And if my status code value is equal to 200, I'm going to put a 1 in there. My stat, if it's not, I'm going to put a 0. So the way you read an if statement is, here is my condition, here is my true clause, here is my false clause. So now when I run through this and I execute this, I see that here I've got some 200s. The success value is equal to 1. If I jump around here and find something other than 200s, there we go. I got a value of 0. Then I have another if statement. It's going to create another field called client errors. And if my status code equals 404, I'm going to put a 1 in there. Otherwise, I'm going to put a 0 in there. Now, these don't have to be 1s and 0s. These could be whatever you want. In fact, you know, if you think about these errors that you're getting, right? These errors might cost you money, might cost you customers, might cost you. And some of the errors are more serious than others. So the point is, if I say if status code equals 404, comma 1, comma 0, that's great. But if I get a 304 or something like that, maybe I want to change it instead of 1. Maybe it costs me twice as much. So maybe I want to put a 2 in there. So you can weight these things if you want to. You can weight them out. You can add, you know, new different values and stuff like that to improve their relativity. And then I'm going to go ahead and sum my successes and call it success count. I'm going to sum my client errors, call it client error count. And because I've done a sum or a count or a min and max, I've got my aggregates tab here. And then if I wanted to, I could divide this by this and figure a percentage and all of that good stuff. So just trying to show you some of the stuff that we can do. Now, this is looking for a literal match, right? It says status code equals, greater than, less than, whatever. Here, I can do a string match if I want to. That's what this is for. Status code matches. So basically matches, it's a string match. So as long as I start with a 4, it could be 401, 402, 403, 413, 426, 4,643,812. As long as it starts with a 4, I'll put a 1 in there. Otherwise, I'll put a 0 in there. Same thing here. So you can either do string matches or numerical evaluations. Questions? Let's move on to lab 5 then. Let's talk about subqueries. You know what? I've got my Apache access logs and I got my Apache error logs. What if my Apache error log showed me that I had somebody trying to do something malicious? Would I not want to be able to go and check my Apache access log based on that IP address to see what they've been doing, where they've been going? Yes, you can. And this is a good example, a good use case for subqueries. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create some subqueries here. Now, what a subquery is obviously it's a query that runs inside of another query. So let me set this up for you. And let me walk you through this process. Let me grab a new log search here and paste this in. If I run this, my Apache access logs, right, what am I seeing? I'm seeing a bunch of different IP addresses, right? Everybody from different IP addresses, what they're doing to access my Apache access logs. Great. Now, let me run this subquery by itself, and we'll talk about what it's doing. So what it's doing is looking at my Apache error log, specifically for any message that says file does not exist. It's looking for this message. Then it's doing a parse anchor, and it's parsing out my time, my error, and my IP address. Then it's counting by that IP address. So let me comment out this last line just so you can see the results. So what it did was it found in my messages here, they all have the same IP address, and they do. In this example, they do. Now, because I have the same IP address and it's only one, I don't have to do this top K, but good coding suggests I do, because I want to pass back only one value. I can pass back more than one value, but in this case, I can either do a top or a top K. The difference between top does not give me a ranking, top K does. I could either use top or I can use top K to get me back my highest IP address. Either one would work. We're just showing you top K here. The point is, I'm going to take and put these two queries together, and I'm going to pass back this IP address into my access logs so that I can see what's going on. I can see what they're trying to access. So the structure of this is I'm going to take this query, and then I'm going to basically apply its result here as a keyword. Remember, we have our metadata tag and keywords here, so that it shows me all of my Apache access logs by that specific IP address. And the way I glue these things together is this. In my subquery, my child query here, I want to add a new command because I want to pass back that IP address. That command is called compose. Compose, what do I want to pass back? I want to pass back IP, the IP value here. And then I'm also, where do I want to place it? I want to place it in the keywords area. So when I run this, now I notice in my aggregate result, I have this IP address, but it's kind of in parentheses, brackets. It's in a wrapper, okay? It's in a wrapper that we're going to pass back to our parent query. Now, I'm going to take this code here. I'm going to copy this code. I'm going to go back to my parent query, and I'm going to paste this code in, but I need to do a couple of other things. Okay. One of the things I need to do for my subquery is my subquery starts with brackets and ends with brackets. So I'm going to add my bracket here for my subquery. And like I said, it ends in a bracket. Also, my subquery starts with the word subquery and a colon. So it knows where the subquery starts and subquery is. So now when I run this, it's going to run the subquery first, find my IP address, pass that information back to this so that it looks for that specific IP address in my access logs. So what happens is now I can see where that IP address has been going in here, what they've been accessing, what pages have they been accessing, what things have they been accessing. That's an example of a subquery. Additionally, in my documentation here, in my lab guide, it talks about how you and I can visit the subquery section in our product documentation. And I would encourage you to do that, because in the subquery section, we can learn how to pass multiple arguments and all optional arguments and all kinds of fun stuff here. So there's a lot more to this than meets the eye, but wanted you to be aware of that. And that's lab number 5. Questions? Moving on to lab number 6. We have a partnership with a company called Newstar. And again, I could open this up in a link. And basically what happens is we pass, or actually Newstar gives us a data dump, if you will, every day of IP addresses and their latitude, longitude, country names, and things like that. So you can use this Newstar relationship that we have to provide latitude, longitude, country name, country code, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, from Newstar. And what we're going to use is we're going to use our lookup command. Now, when you want to read a lookup command, you really want to read it from the end. So we're going to pass in an IP address. we're going to tell Newstar it is an IP address. This URL is going to go to that location. And then we're going to tell it we want the latitude, the longitude, and whatever fields that we want. So here in this lab number 6, I'm going to take this lovely code here, and I'm going to simply just copy it. So I'm going to copy this code. By the way, I've got a bunch of tabs open here. I don't need them open anymore. So I'm going to click on the more action button of any of these tabs, say close all tabs, just to kind of keep things clean. And I'm going to go ahead and paste this code in. Again, I'm looking at my Apache access logs. I'm doing a parse anchor to grab out the IP address. Then this latitude and longitude, this lookup is going to grab me my latitude and longitude from my Newstar file. I'm going to comment this out. I'm going to comment this out. I'm going to run this. So again, when I do my lookup, it gives me my latitude, my longitude. If I wanted to, I could say, not only do I want latitude and longitude, maybe I want country name. Now it'll give me latitude, longitude, and country name. Okay. Then if I want to create a map visualization, for my map visualization, I need 3 things. I need latitude, I need longitude, and I need count. If I don't have any one of those 3 things, I won't be able to render a map visualization. So I want to count by latitude and longitude. Again, if I wanted to here, I could even include country name. I don't need country name to generate a map though. So there I am. Here's my aggregates, my latitude, my longitude, my count. And because I've got those 3 things, this little symbol right here is enabled. And I can render this now as a map on a map box plot. Additionally, I can also sort this. If you don't specify the order, by default, it makes it descending. So you can sort your count, in this case, by descending order. You don't need it for the map visualization. You do need it if you want to display it tabularly and have it make sense. Okay. Just to prove a point, since I grew up in Missouri, the show me state here, I'm going to comment out after the word longitude. So I'm going to have latitude, I'm going to have count, but I am not going to have longitude, which means this little icon right here is not enabled. I can click on it and results. I must have latitude, longitude, and count in order to be able to render this as a map. And that is lab number 6. There's some additional little exercises if you want to play around. Moving on to lab number 7, we got 13 labs to go through, and we got a little time here. It looks like I'll probably be done here in about 15 minutes, so just humor me. And you guys can take your exams. So here we're going to talk about the difference operator and the smooth operator. So let me go ahead and take this code, copy it, go back in here, paste it in. Again, what I'm doing is I'm grabbing the data from my Apache access logs. Time slice is going to break up things, in this case, into 1-minute buckets, right? Since I'm running for 15 minutes, it'll be 15 1-minute buckets. If I change this to 60 minutes, it'll be 60 1-minute buckets. Then I'm going to count by my time slice. So let me go ahead and comment some things out here real quick. And run this. Now, by default, when you use time slices, they are not necessarily in order. You must put them in order. So in order to improve readability, I want to sort by my time slice in ascending order, ASC. I want it to be in descending order, it's DESC. Or if I leave it blank, it'll be in descending order. But I want this to be in ascending order. So I can see, here's my time, here's the next time, the next time, the next time, et cetera, et cetera. Now, in the case of my difference operator, when I run this, what it's going to do is it's going to take this number minus this number, give me this result. This number minus this number, give me this result. This number minus this number, give me this result. And you may ask yourself, why? What good is it? Well, let me turn this into a line chart and let's talk about it. So again, I hate to use this example, but I'm going to. Let's say these are the number of COVID cases that we have. The COVID cases rose, which means my available hospital beds went down, right? So the point is that you and I can see as things go up or down here as far as things, what's going on with my inventory. That's what my difference operator can be used for. Tracking your inventory and things like that. You know, again, as my sales go up, my stock on hand goes down. So inventory management typically is what you use your difference operator for. Now, besides the difference operator, we also have the smooth operator. So let me go ahead and copy that. Paste it in. Again, the code looks very similar, right? This time we're going to grab our Apache access logs, but only those messages that have a status code of 404. Again, I'm going to create my 1-minute buckets. I'm going to create 60 of them. Let me change this to 60 minutes. This time when I do my count, I'm going to rename count as error underscore count. So I simply added an as clause here to give it a name. And then I'm going to sort it by my time slice. This is very similar to what you and I saw before. Let me comment out this last line and run it. So again, instead of this being count or underscore count, it's now error underscore count because of my as clause. Sorted in ascending order. Now, what does my smooth operator do? My smooth operator is going to take this first value and divide it by 1. It's going to take these two values, add them together, and divide it by 2. My next 3 values, add them together, divided by 3. Next 4 values, add them together, divided by 4. It's going to do this till it gets to 10. Once it gets to 10, where it's added 10 values up, it's going to drop the oldest number and add the next new number. And again, divide by 10. So that's what my rolling average does. And if I show you this as a line chart, you know, again, here are my ups and downs, right? But here is kind of a rolling average of what's happened. So I don't know about you guys, but in the US right now, the stock market is having conniption fits and it's going up and down and all that fun stuff. Well, rather than seeing the ups and downs and having conniption fits, we can look at it over a rolling average to see, you know, how things are going. It's getting better or worse, that sort of thing. Now, because I'm looking at the same set of numbers here in the same scale, this may not be a really good representation. So one of the things we can do here with these visualizations is we can go into the properties, the gear icon here, and I can change my series. So I can have my error count, instead of it being a line chart, I can make it a column chart. And then this rolling average could be my line chart on top of that. And if I want to here, I can have it use the secondary axes on the right. So now when I change it, here is my various data points shown as a column. And then here is my rolling average, which again, I read it off of this side. Now I could, if I want to, let me go back and make one minor change here. Let me tell it not to use the secondary axes. There we go. So here I can see my rolling average using the same axes as these values. And that's what we're trying to show you, is that not only can you have some cool stuff here by using these functions, but you also can change this into a combo chart, making it very, very easy. Questions so far? Okay. Labs 8 and 9 go together very, very well. Okay. So labs 8 and 9, I'm going to do together. So I'm going to go out and revisit our friends the snort law. So underscore source category equals labs / snort. Okay. Now, as I mentioned, the snort device proceeds to tell us what is going on with regards to the security of our network, various attempts and stuff like that. Well, over the last 60 minutes, I've got over 6,000 messages. I don't want to read each message. I don't have to. With Sumo Logic, I can click log reduce and it will combine my like messages together. So what it's going to do, it's going to take those 6,000 messages and it's going to combine my like messages together to kind of give me an indication of where I need to focus my attention. So out of my 6,219 messages, 3,000 of them are this message right here. Bug port, config.conf file access, okay? Attempted information leak is how it views it. Now, I investigate this. And then when I investigate this, I realized that what's happened is we did an update on some software. And that update wrote that config.conf file. So this really isn't a threat at all. And so what happens is that things have a relevant score. I can go in here and demote that relevant score to 0. Because what happened, we did an update on software. That software created this issue. I really want to potentially ignore it. So I can adjust my relevant score. By default, it calculates a relevant score based on the count and severity and all stuff. I can either promote it to a full 10 or I can demote it down to a 0. Additionally, in here, I can edit these, I can split these things out, I can look at the specific messages that made these things up, right? What I can't do here is delete. I cannot delete them. Now, additionally, if I want to investigate one of these things, let's say I want to grab, let's take this attempted user privilege here. If I go ahead and look at those 153 messages, so again, I've got 153 messages here. Back in my messages, I can break it up by my host or by my name or by my category. So I can break it up by either host, name, or category. And if I want to, in any one of those 3 areas, I can look at the surrounding messages plus or minus 1 minute, 5 minutes, or 10 minutes. So if there's a message here that's kind of a smoking gun, I can look at the messages that came before that and the messages that came after that and see what's going on. 1, 5, or 10, you'll see a test question for that. You'll also see a test question for host, name, and category. So I want you to be aware of those sort of things. And that's lab number 8. Now, lab number 9 takes this a step further. Back over here with my lab reduce. You know, this should give me an idea of what's happening as far as my network and my security and what to focus on. But wouldn't it be cool if I can compare it against other days and other times and stuff like that? So that's where lab 9 comes in. In lab 9, we have this log compare. And when I click on log compare, it changes my syntax up here. And it basically is going to go back 24 hours. So what's happening? It's going to look at my snort logs right now. It's going to go back 60 minutes and it's going to do a log reduce on that. Then it's going to go in my snort logs, go back 24 hours, go back 60 minutes, do a log reduce on that. Then it's going to compare the results for me. So here I can see things went down 61%. They went down 20.24%. They went up 14%. So I can see now I'm getting a sense for change here as far as the things getting better, things getting worse. What do I really want to focus my attention on? Okay. Besides seeing those percentage changes, you may see words like new or words like gone. New means it wasn't there before, but it is there now. Gone means it was there before, but it's not there now. So you can, I can, we can figure out what to focus on. This went up 261%, okay? But it's a low number, so you know that might explain it. So the point is, this gives you an indicator of what may be going on. By the way, you can adjust this time shift if you want to. Like I said, this went back the previous day. Maybe what I want to do is I want to go back the previous week. I don't know about you, but let's see, today's Wednesday, right? My Wednesday is nothing like my Tuesday, which is nothing like my Monday. However, my weeks are run fairly well together. So my Wednesday behaves pretty much like my previous Wednesday. My Tuesday behaves like my previous Tuesday. So maybe when you're comparing this, you want to go back a week to the previous same day, previous week, and see how that behaves. And so that's log compare. So in lab 8, we had log reduce. Lab 9, we have log compare. Any questions? All right, lab 10, we want to use the outlier function. Now I'm going to open up the documentation on this. So I'm going to right click, open this up in a new tab. What the outlier function does is it's going to sit there and evaluate some data, and it's going to display for it to you on a line chart. There are 4 arguments that you can adjust for your outlier. There is the window that you want to use. There is the threshold. The threshold is the standard deviation up or down that we want to go. The number of consecutive data points, and whether I want to see outliers that are above or below the average. So let me show you how this works. Let me take this code right here. And let me go ahead and swipe over this code. And if you don't mind, I'm going to go back here. I'm going to get rid of all these lovely tabs. Grab a new tab, paste this in. By the way, I'm going to make this 60 minutes here just to make things up. So again, I'm looking at my Apache Access log, status code of 404. I've created 1-minute buckets. I am going to count my status code as, and I'm going to give it a name here as error count based on my time slice. And then I'm going to do this outlier stuff. So let me comment out the outlier stuff right now, just so you get an idea what this looks like. So again, here's my time slices. Here's my error count. Okay. They're not in any order, by the way. So the outlier function, by the way, will put them in order. Some, like transpose and outlier, will put them in order for you. So what does this outlier thing do? This outlier thing is going to take my error count and it's going to do some serious math on it. It's going to sit there and take, based on my window, which is 10. So it's going to go back to the previous 10 data points. And using those previous 10 data points, it's going to calculate my mean and it's going to calculate my standard deviation. Again, those of you remember college statistics classes, you talked about standard deviations and mean and average and all that good stuff. So it's going to calculate my mean and my standard deviation. Now, this threshold says how many standard deviations do I want to go plus or minus. So here's my standard deviation value. It's going to go plus or minus 3 standard deviations. So that's going to calculate for me an upper boundary and a lower boundary. And then the question is my error count in that range? If it's in that range, and by the way, another way to look at this is a line chart. So as long as it's in the range, I don't have a triangle, a red triangle, everything's fine. So what I'm looking at here is I'm looking at my data points, my error count. This cloud behind it is my upper and lower boundaries. Now, let me help myself here a little bit. Let me change my threshold, if you don't mind, instead of 3, let me make it 2. It's going to plus or minus 2 standard deviations. Now you'll notice here that I've got some outliers. And if I look at my numbers, and if I go to my next page here, there we go. I have a value here of 24. My upper is 21. My lower is 9. So I'm out of range. Now, here's where we get into the consecutive value. The consecutive value of 1 means I only need 1 value outside my boundary before I consider it an outlier. Okay. So what does that mean? It means that this value is outside. I'm going to display it as an outlier. Okay. And the next value resets. If I change this consecutive value to 2, now I need 2 data points outside of my boundaries before I mark it as an outlier. I need 2 of those in a row. So that is what that's all about, the consecutive value. You know, is it a single value? Do I need 2 values, 3 values, 4 values before I consider myself having an issue? Okay. And then this direction of plus or minus. Do I want to see outliers above? Do I want to see outliers below? Either, both, what? So for example, I get rid of the minus sign, I only see the things above. So you can decide what you want to see above or below. Now let me give you the use case here. The use case is I'm a manufacturing plant. I manufacture things. And what I'm looking at here is my average number of defects. So if I'm below average on my defects, I really don't care about that. So that is a case I might turn off my minus sign. I only care when I'm above average on my defects. So hopefully that gives you an idea of when I might use some of this stuff. But this gives me an idea of statistical outliers, right? And so this is basically built-in functionality inside Sumo Logic that you and I can use. All right. The predict operator. The predict operator has two models, two modes that it can use. So if I go into the documentation here for my predict operator, you're going to find that it has a linear regression model and it has an autoregression model. Okay. Linear regression model is a straight line. Autoregression is not a straight line. And so depending on how you use the syntax in here, it'll know whether you meant to say you're in autoregression or you're in linear regression. So this helps us predict things. So again, if I take this lovely code example here and I copy it and I go back out here and I grab myself a new query and I paste that in, let me make this 60 minutes as well. Again, Apache access, status code of 404. I'm creating my 1 minute buckets. I'm counting my status code. So this is all the same stuff we've seen before. But now I've got a predict operator. When I run this, the predict operator, based on my linear model that I'm using here, I didn't specify an AR model. It's going to sit there and say, okay, here's my error count that I calculated up here. Okay. And I'm running it against this model. And this number minus this number gives me this number. This number minus this number gives me this number. And if I plot it out as a line chart, here's my various data points. And then I can see it predicts out. Now, I don't know if you can see it very clearly, but to me, this line is sloping down a little bit. Now, if this is my revenue, this is probably not good news because it's going down, it's decreasing over time. If it's my cost, that's probably good news. I'm decreasing my cost. So this predict operator gives you a graph that says, gee, how are we doing? Things getting better, things getting worse, all of that. And again, you can use the legend in here to filter and play and have yourself a good time. And that's your predict operator. Brought to you by Sumo Logic. Now in lab 12, we also have this transaction operator. Now you'll find that we've got lots of transactional type stuff that we're doing now with traces and spans and all that stuff. So I wouldn't get too wrapped up in this particular exercise, but I am going to explain to you what's going on. All right. You and I go shopping, right? We go to the grocery store, we go to the pharmacy, we go to whatever. I put something in my cart, my wife takes it out of my cart or whatever. She says, you don't need this, that type of thing. So the point is that we want to see when a customer goes shopping, the state of that shopping cart, whether they placed the order, whether we followed through, whether we shipped it to them, delivered it to them, whatever. And so this transaction operator takes transactional based data like EcoMart, and it allows us to see the state of the various things. So this is the part that makes this magic work right here. We're going to look at the IP address and we're going to see whether it's in the confirmation state, the order ship state, the cart state, what state. And ultimately, we're going to display from state to state. So that when I run this, and let me make this for probably 3 hours. Run this here real quick. I probably want to make it something longer, but what happens is I can see from the various states to the various states. So from order shipped to cart, here's the number of count. From shipping information to order shipped, here's the count. I can actually click on this sand key diagram, which is I think the test question here. If you click on the sand key diagram, now you get a really cool visualization that you can see. I went from, here's my cart, right? And from my cart, I went and asked them shipping information, and I still had most of my customers, right? So I had 4,552 customers there. And I've got 2,362 customers. So I did lose some business for whatever reason. But then when we went to order confirmation, then all of a sudden things fell down. Now, why? Why did things fall down? I need to look at my logs. You know, did my customer not like the shipping price? Did they not? Did they try to purchase it and their credit card was denied? You know, what happened here? But visually, I can see where I'm losing things in my various process. So whether you're hiring an employee and you want to look at the data of your, you know, gee, I've sent out a bunch of resumes. Gee, I've sent out, I've done some first level screening. I've done some second level screening. I've actually sent out an offer. I've actually hired. You know, you can see the states of anything that you have state data for. And so that's what this allows you to do. So there is that. Now, let's get to lab 13 and lab 14. Let's wrap this rascal up. Here in lab 13, we want to talk about creating meaningful alerts. Yesterday, we talked about alerts and we showed you if you go into the save as that you and I can go in there and create some alerts. Now we actually have a blog post here. That's actually a pretty good blog post. It is actually on our customer facing website. And basically it says, look, if you really want to create alerts, you need to do two things. One, it needs to be actionable. Somebody needs to be able to take action on it, and it should be directed. So we proceed to talk about this and give you this wonderful example and all that fun stuff. What we're trying to say is if you want to have an alert, all right, and now let's go back here to this example of outliers. Let me go back to my outlier example here. So you see I've got outliers, right? Do I want to be alerted when all this stuff happens? No, I don't. I want to be alerted only when I have outliers. So we recommend, and you'll see this on the test, we recommend that you add some sort of a where clause. And in my case, I want where the error count indicator actually I could use violation is greater than 0. That's when I want to be notified, when I actually have an outlier condition. So if I run this, now I'm only seeing those times when I have a violation. That's when I want to be notified. I don't care if everything's running fine. So we are advocating to you in lab 13 that in order to make a alert proper and meaningful, you typically want to add a where clause to it. And that's going to be the answer to your question. You want to simply add a where clause to it. Now, good news, that takes care of all of our labs, and that takes care of search mastery. What questions have you before I take you in and help you get ready to take the exam? What questions do you have? Okay. Okay, Lily asked an excellent question, and I appreciate her asking. Her question is, before we move on to the exam, could you re-show how to comment out multiple lines at once? I sure can, Lily. I thank you for asking the question. So let me show you. Let's go back here to Sumo Logic. Let's go ahead and grab a bunch of these lines. I'm going to grab any one of the code examples I have. To comment out a bunch of lines, you want to put your cursor up here in your query area. And if you're on a Windows keyboard, you hold down your Alt key. If you're on a Mac, you hold down your Option key. And your cursor should change into a plus sign. With your cursor as a plus sign, you then click on your mouse and you drag a line down. And by dragging that line down, whatever you type is going to go across all of your lines. Well, you know how to comment out a line, right? It's 2 forward slashes. And that's how then you can comment out a whole bunch of lines. So Lily, I hope that answers your question. Again, if you need me to do it again, I certainly can. But thank you for asking. As I said, it's probably the most important thing you're going to learn in this class, to be honest with you. Yeah. Any other questions, ladies and gentlemen? All right, well, let's get you ready to take your exams then. What I need you to do is I need you to log out of the training account that you're using. I need you to log out of our training environment. So you're logged in right now with training analyst, whatever. I want you to open up this navigation panel. And down here where it says training plus analyst, whatever, click on it and click the sign out button. I want you to sign out of our training environment. Why, you may ask? Well, we don't want training analysts to take the exam. We want you with your name to take the exam. We want you to get credit for it. So what I want you to do is go to your company's Sumo Logic environment. So go to your company's Sumo Logic environment and log in with your credentials. So go to your company's Sumo Logic environment, log in with your credentials. Then you want to click on this House tab, click on this Certification tab, click on this Get Certified tab, click on this Get Certified tab again, no section, panel, whatever, and then find the Search Mastery exam in English. We do have them in a couple of other languages, Japanese, Korean, Spanish, but click on that. Go ahead and click the registration link. And before you start getting in here and taking this exam, I want to walk you through a couple of things. First of all, up in the upper right-hand corner, if you click on that, you should see something that says your profile. And here in your profile, you can see any exams that you've taken and passed. You can view your certificate. You can add it to your LinkedIn profile. It's not in here, you didn't pass it, you didn't take it, that sort of thing. So I'm going to go scroll to the bottom of that and I'm going to click done. Now, here in the exam, I want you to watch for just a second. I want to show a couple things to you. So here, before you start, when I click in here, it tells me I've got 30 questions. I got 60 minutes to complete it. It's open book, open notes. Ask me or Peter any questions. We will help you out. A passing score is 75%. Okay. I click next. Now going to take me to my exam. It's going to generate some questions for me. Here's my 60-minute counter there. And as I start to scroll down, or if I click on start assessment, once I start seeing questions here, I can start answering them. So first question, which is not a parameter in my outlier operator. Well, let's see, we had window, we had threshold, we had consecutive, we didn't have quantity. Okay. Put the following things in order, right? So the first thing I always typically do is my source category. So I drag it back up all the way to the top. Drag it up there. Then I want to typically parse and all that fun stuff. So I think this one's going to go next. Then I'm going to sum. Then I'm going to do this. So this is the right order. Now, there's a couple of questions on this exam that you might see that I don't like, okay? For example, this one, pin searches. We didn't talk about pin searches. Pin searches you can find in your recent folder. So if you get a question like this and you don't remember covering it, ask us. Ask me, ask Peter. We will gladly help you. There's also a couple of questions in here that I don't like that I'm going to see if I can find them here real quick. They deal with the Apache application that we installed yesterday. I'm going to see if I can find them for you real quick. That's not one of them. That's not one of them. Here we go. Install the Apache app and open the Apache visitor location, okay? How does the query corresponding to the US map differ from the world map? The difference is there is a filter where country name equals United States. We didn't do this in this class. We didn't have an exercise in this class. I don't like this question here, but I'm trying to get it removed. But there's the answer. So again, if you get that question, feel free to ask. There's another Apache access question on here that I don't like. I'll see if I can find it here for you. There we go. Install the Apache app and open the Apache error log analysis. Which field is not provided? The field that's not provided in there is the refer field, okay? I could show you the dashboard, I could show you the fields, but it's the refer field. Now, the point is, I've answered some questions here. I didn't answer enough to pass, but when I hit submit or next, I see that I failed, and more importantly, I can see what questions I got right and what questions I got wrong, okay? So that's kind of nice. The other thing is when you take it and you pass, don't forget to click that submit button. So it adds it to your profile. If you don't click that submit button, it doesn't get in your profile. So please, please, please do that. That's why I wanted to show you this stuff before you took your exam. Again, you get hung on a question, feel free to ask. All right, so let me wrap this up and send you on your way. So I just want to turn my camera back on. And again, I want to personally thank you all for spending the last 2 days with us, or yesterday or today or whatever you did. And I hope you got out of here what you wanted to get out of here. I hope you're able to use Sumo much better. If there's anything we can do to help you, please feel free to ask myself or Peter. Otherwise, I look forward to seeing you in the class again real soon. And I hope you have a wonderful day. So feel free to take the exam. If you don't pass it, you can take it again if you want, or you can wait a day or two and take it again. It's entirely up to you, but hopefully you'll pass it. And like I said, if you get stuck on a question, feel free to ask me, myself, or Peter, and we'll gladly help you out. Otherwise, wanted to thank you all. Hope you guys have a great week. So that's it for me. I'll be here. I'm going to stop my sharing. I'm going to turn off the recording.